We are just getting more indications of what has come of this meeting between British Prime Minister Boris Johnson meeting with the Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and the promise of more financial and military support. This at the same time we're learning that the European Commission has pledged about 1 billion euros to support Ukraine and countries that are receiving refugees. I think 1 billion euros would work out to about 1.1 billion US dollars. They're almost at parity here, 1-to-1. But again, this is still more money coming. And to hear a lot of the leadership in Ukraine talk about, including the former leadership, they need a lot more of that money. That was echoed by my conversations with Viktor Yushchenko, the former president of Ukraine. He has been taking a look at this latest tragedy, this attack on a very crowded train station in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, that has killed at least 52 people, injured hundreds more, as a sign that things are going to get nastier there. As if. Take a look. Mr. President, as I'm sure you're aware of this Russian attack on a train station in your country. Scores are dead, and it follows what seems to be more targeting of civilians. Your thoughts on that?
Можна сказати, що трагедія Краматорська, яка сьогодні відбулася,
the tragedy of Kramatorsk that took place today,
коли за буквально одну секунду було вбито багато
literally
дітей,
in 1 second, many kids, many women were killed.
Мені здається, дуже глибоко ілюструє
I think this illustrates
ціль путінської війни.
The essence and the goal of this war a lot.
Антилюдську.
Putin conducts the anti-human war. It's an anti-human. And his army is the same way. It's anti-human.
Яка не ховає вбитих своїх офіцерів.
Putin wishes death upon us. And we want to live.
І це суть конфлікту. Він працює
And
по
this is
своїй
the essence
стратегії.
of the conflict.
І вбиває нас кожен день.
He's killing us every day as we speak. We resist his policy that led to Nazism and fascism, in his country.
До фашизму, до нацизму, до тої
Because
ведучої
we
авторитарної моделі.
we resist his policy that led to Nazism and fascism, in his country.
Одним словом,
And of course, we resist the totalitarianism that comes from Russia. And to sum it up, whatever happened today, the things that happened, the atrocity that happened today is happening every day. Every single day, he is doing this.
Mr. President, you had said after the attack on Bucha, at that point, that, quoting here, sir, compromise with Russia is impossible. After this latest attack on this train station, do you still believe that? And do you still think talks that President Zelenskyy still wants to have with Russia is worth it?
Я гадаю, що
If we're talking about the tactic of Russia in Ukraine, the tactic of Putin, it's the total loss tactic, because so far they've lost on all the front lines in Ukraine.
Путін думає, що він мачо.
Putin thinks that he's some kind of a macho, but he needs to get some actual victory of some kind in order to demand the negotiations. Then we can talk. And because of this, this is the most significant reason for us to state that the negotiations on any truce, on any kind of a truce, are impossible. They shouldn't be happening. Due to the current circumstances.
Mr. President, back in the 2004 presidential campaign, Vladimir Putin tried to poison you, tried to kill you. Do you worry for President Zelensky's safety? Do you think that Vladimir Putin wants him dead?
Як офіційно,
Yeah, so far there have been several, attempts to assassinate Zelenskyy. There were certain, diverse groups that went to Kyiv with that goal. So this is definitely the signature and the handwriting of Putin. This could be expected of him.
So is that why you have said, Mr. President, that you believe that Vladimir Putin is indeed capable of using chemical, even nuclear weapons, that this idea that he never would because it would be dangerous and risky for him as well, it doesn't hold up, that he would do that? Do you still believe he would do that? He would use those type of weapons?
If he wins, if he receives some minor victories, something in that vein, then yes, the possibility of him using it potentially is large. It's a high possibility. But if he, continues losing, and he, then in his surroundings, in his circles of allies and the government internally, people will probably resist, and they will try to diminish that possibility of using the nuclear and chemicals.
Sir, one thing that comes to mind is that Vladimir Putin always likes to say, as the support of the Russian people. There's one poll out this week, Mr. President, that has him saying 70% of the Russian people approve of what he's doing. Do you believe that, or do you think that his support back home is collapsing?
We're talking about the authoritarian regime here. So, the terms such as social studies, statistics, are very relative terms, and they don't reflect necessarily reality.
Але враховуючи, що у руках Путіна є єдиний і головний інформаційний мікрофон Росії,
But taking into account that Putin holds the only available microphone, official microphone in the country.
Враховуючи, що всі
all his political opponents are imprisoned.
Mr. President, one thing we've discovered is that right now it's all about that support and whether it stays. And there's very little signs that sanctions or limits on business activity on Russia have had any effect on him. How do you think he is continuing and paying for this war when, he has been sanctioned in almost every business and almost every prominent Western power has cut ties to him? How do you think he's doing that?
By the end of February and during March, Putin received 34 billion US dollars as a payment for exports of energy resources. Ukraine during this time received only 1 billion. So, when Mr. Zelenskyy is calling for that complete, total embargo of the Russian energy resources, the capital, any kind of trade relations, right, trade circulation, people exchange, anything in that vein, then it's actually the scream from within, of our souls, from our hearts, right, that it's indeed necessary. And because Putin is conducting two types of wars. One is a hot one in the battlefields of Ukraine, and another one is a cold one, sanction related to sanctions.
Sir, I know you have been concerned about the pace of aid, military aid, and the like coming to your country. I know certainly President Zelenskyy has. It's raised a question in some circles as to whether some NATO members, maybe including the United States, are pulling their punches here, that they don't want Vladimir Putin to lose, because a Vladimir Putin who loses will be a greater threat on the world. Do you accept that? Do you think there could be something to that, or do you think it's just nonsense?
So I think some countries, some governments believe these days that, in Ukraine right now, it's not just the conflict of Ukraine versus Russia, it's the conflict of, the bigger powers, Europe and US versus Russia. So whoever wishes the failure, wishes for the failure of the European policies, of the European strategies, Western European strategies.
Це перша позиція.
And also the second, part of this is that there appeared several European countries that are basically corrupted by that import of Russian energy resources into them. And within the last 10-15 years, this has been going on. They are basically dependent on that part, of Putin regime.
Це, по суті, політична корупція, яка в Європі була запроваджена Путіним.
And it's a political corruption regime that is being implemented in several European countries in Europe. Basically, those regimes tolerate him.
І це привело до того, що
And this led to the following, that there was a struggle to come up with a unified position in terms of the strategy in Ukraine. Especially in the first days after the invasion started, there was no solidarity.
Mr. President, a couple of weeks ago, after President Biden had said, and I quote here, "For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power," referring to Vladimir Putin, he since dialed it back, saying that the U.S. does not have a policy of recommending a regime change. But you had commended his words at the time when you said, when President Biden says Putin is evil, I think that is a very correct statement, that compromise with Russia is impossible. When you cited what he was saying about a possible regime change, that Vladimir Putin must go, do you still stand by that? And do you still think that for there to be peace in the region, no matter what happens in Ukraine, and hopefully things are resolved and soon, that Vladimir Putin should be gone, that he should leave, that he should be either forced out or even killed?
Я переконаний, що Путін – це породження тої політики.
Yes, Putin is, so to say, the result of certain policies that existed in Russia within the last 10-15 years, and now the problem that we have, the main problem in Europe is Putin, and it's the personification of evil. So when Biden made that statement, I completely agree with the first unedited version of it, because he named the truth. He said honestly what he wanted to say. He called a spade, right? And of course, diplomatically, it should have been put differently. But right now is not the time for diplomacy and for tolerance. Right now, we have to state things clearly and very specifically. So he is evil. And evil should be called evil.
Питанню давайте не будемо забувати, що ескалація почалася не 24 лютого цього року, коли президент
The escalation didn't
Путін
start on
виступив.
24th of February of this year.
Ви пригадуєте, як у грудні
You remember in December of last year, Putin basically, made an ultimatum to the American president by sending a specific letter to him.
довгого листа. Як через декілька днів аналогічний лист
And in several days, he sent the same letter to the NATO leaders.
Північно-Атлантичного блоку.
Ukraine was not even mentioned there as a country. It was not almost mentioned there. So let us not question who the bells are ringing for.
Thank you, Mr. President. I enjoyed talking to
Thank
you,
you
sir.
very much.
Be well. Be safe.